let's say, for example, that October 7th somehow, made me a villain among a certain segment of the audience. Well, the obvious thing to do then would have been for me to swivel on my heel and just turn on all my principles and just reverse course. Right? I didn't do that. Okay, why didn't I do that? The easy solution would have been to do that. And the answer is because, for me, that's not how this works. I've taken a bunch of positions that my audience does not like, including the position that Donald Trump did not win the 2020 election. He did not win the 2020 election. I took the position that January 6th was bad because January 6th was bad. Right? I'm willing to say that stuff. And maybe it cost me audience, but this is, again,
we got breaking news, so do not miss a single second of this. Make sure you stay locked in because there will be zero interruptions while you watch this video. The mask is officially coming off Ben Shapiro, and the entire conservative movement is waking up to what's really happening. Today, we are tearing down his latest interview on the PBD podcast. We're exposing his relentless Israel-first obsession, his stubborn refusal to take accountability for his COVID vaccine mandates push, his nonstop bitter attacks on Tucker Carlson, and his complete fear of facing Nick Fuentes and the rising younger generation. The comment section is revolting, the audience is walking away, and the establishment narrative is crumbling. Let's get straight into it.
This is why
you had a vaccine position as well, because my guys would typically, when I ask about Ben, so, let me tell you, why don't you ask him about the vaccine?
Because, please ask me about the vaccine. For the love of God,
what was your position about the vaccine?
My position on the vaccine from the beginning was that I was following what the data was and what the government was saying about the data and what Pfizer was saying about the data. Mm-hmm. So I was very pro-vaccine for people who were older and had obesity. Okay, my own children, I did not vaccinate. I was never in favor of children being vaccinated. My company sued the federal government, unlike any of these other assholes, including the people at Fox News, who mandated that many of their employees get the vax. We did not mandate the vax at our company, and we sued the federal government to stop a vaccine mandate. So my own personal view on whether you should take the vaccine or not is irrelevant to my public policy view as to whether you should be forced to take the vaccine. Now, there's a tweet that, again, people clip and goes viral every so often from, January of 2021, maybe, and where I said that this means you should take the vaccine, idiots. Okay, what that was a response to a misinterpretation of data that was being put out at the time that suggested that you were safer, that somehow you were less likely to get COVID from not taking the vaccine than from taking the vaccine. Now, the current data did not suggest that. It was a misinterpretation of the data. Now,
so it was a mistake based on the data they presented to you at the time.
Correct. And then the data turns out
to trust the data at the time.
Correct. And this is always and so again, this runs.
Somebody could question that and say, come on, Ben. I mean, it was propaganda. How did you buy into it?
Well, I mean, but I didn't know that it was propaganda at the time, and neither did the Trump administration, which was pushing it at the time. I mean, President Trump still says that Operation Warp Speed was one of his great accomplishments.
It's always confusing when he says
again, and by the way, the data tend to show that it did lower death rates among the elderly and the obese. Mm-hmm. It didn't do much for people who are 40 and healthy, and it had counterproductive effects for people who are young.
Could somebody say, well, Ben, that's why I question your instinct. You were off on that. We followed you, and you got people to say...
Yes, I think that's a great way to put it. I question your instinct. Okay, so here is my view. People's instincts are less reliable over the course of time than the data. I will change my opinion as evidence and data comes in. Okay, the evidence will change, and so will my opinion on these things. So I came out very early on. I said there should not be lockdowns and that we should start tranching people back into this is like April of 2020. I said we should not be locking anybody down. Kids should go back to school. The data that was coming out of Sweden suggested there was not open air transmission and that the virus was not particularly damaging to people who are young. So we should tranche back young people into the workforce, let them all get COVID, develop natural immunity, and then you start tranching people. Right, you're right, it's December 2020, December 8th, 2020. Right, you have to go back to the one...
December 8th, 2020 is what?
This is right when Pfizer was announcing that and when the administration was announcing that the vaccine not only prevented death, but also prevented transmission, which it turns out was not rooted in data. They were just lying. Okay, now, you could say, I think the government's lying to me all the time. That is a heuristic. That is stupid. Sometimes the government is lying to you. Okay, sure. But I can't use the absence of data to just form an opinion. Right? The game online right now that I find bewildering and stupid is a game where somebody makes 100 predictions. 99% of them are outlandish and insane. One of them is outlandish and correct. Everyone forgets the 99 they made that were outlandish and insane and remembers the one that they made that was outlandish and correct and say this person is now a good person to trust going forward on all things because they had a good instinct. They had a good instinct. Okay, but would you put that money with the money manager? He fails 99 out of 100 times. He was first on all 100, but he was wrong 99 out of 100. But on that one, he did great. Sure, on net, he lost you a shitload of money. But on that one, man, he nailed it. Okay, or are you going to go with the person who follows the data and has a pretty steady and solid rate of return and is right, say, 95 out of 100 times, but sometimes on the 5, the data, underlying data, is wrong and problematic. The instinct in politics is always to go with the outlandish prediction that comes true. So to take another example, I thought Trump was going to lose the 2016 election. Why did I think Trump was going to lose the 2016 election? Because every piece of data suggested that Trump was going to lose the 2016 election. There are people out there who are saying, no. I've been checking the law and signs. Trump's for sure going to win. Now, okay, that's fine. You were right. I was wrong. Trump won. Right? And I'm happy he won because then I, voted for him in 2020 and endorsed him in 2020 and campaigned for him in 2024. I'm happy he won. Even though I did not vote in the 2016 election, I was pleased that he beat Hillary Clinton. When that happened, a lot of people then went to, okay, we can't trust any poll ever again. Now, that's a bad heuristic. Okay, so again, there are rules that we ought to approach the world with. That doesn't mean that you're right every single time. It doesn't mean that all polls forever cannot be trusted. And it doesn't mean that your best source, one of the things that happened in sort of the vaccine space is that we went from, we ought to be skeptical of the experts, which I agree with. And if I committed a sin there, the sin was not being skeptical enough of the people who were purported to have the expertise. Fine. That's fair.
That position.
Okay, that's fine. And that's a fair critique. And in the future, I will be even more skeptical. Fine. But we went from be skeptical of the experts to be totally unskeptical of morons. Right? People who are total non-experts, people who don't know their ass from their elbow on epidemiology or vaccines. Like, don't listen to that doctor. We should be even more skeptical of the doctor than we would be for Bob down the street who says the measles vaccine is going to kill your kids. And that's just a bad way to approach data. Yeah. It's a bad way to approach the world. And again, if you don't take this stuff seriously, then it's great. You can just throw a bunch of bullshit out there, and then people glom on to the one piece of Alex Jones is a great example. It says outlandish stuff all the time. But one time he said one thing about maybe an airplane would hit the World Trade Center, and that means that he's Nostradamus. And Nostradamus isn't even Nostradamus, right? You see this online all the time. Nostradamus made this prediction. This game is really, really, really dumb. If you've predicted, say, 15 out of the last 2 recessions, but you hit those 2 recessions, but you missed 13 times.
Yep. So do you think there is a groyper problem on the right?
I mean, obviously, Nick has built himself a nice-sized audience, and I think that a lot of these sort of, edgy, half comedy, half not comedy stuff that he's doing has traffic. I mean, transgressive politics is always attractive to young people, whether it's Hassan Piker saying he loves Mao on the left, or whether it's Fuentes saying he loves Hitler on the right. Kind of violating the rules is always sexy to people. And so it kind of bespeaks authenticity, or it bespeaks humor, or whatever it is. So yeah, no, I think that there's a legitimate issue with people who believe some of the things, and because at a certain point, and you see this with the DSA left, the same way you're seeing it with the groyper right, is it's all joking until it's not joking, right? Like you joke about Hitler, and at a certain point you're like, am I really joking about Hitler, or was he really kind of okay? Like, was he really kind of an OG, or was he not? Right? Like, have we really been sold about?
You think he's joking? Or you think
I don't think that Fuentes is joking. I think that he likes to use humor as a cover for the fact that he is not joking, actually. I think that his belief system is I'll grant him the courtesy of sincerity. I think he's sincere in his belief systems. I think he's wrong, but I think much of what he says is quite morally terrible, but I think that he comes by it honestly.
You work with him.
I did not. So
did he work? What was the relationship with you guys back in the days? Because I know he came on. I asked him the question.
So he has this whole weird villain origin story that he's come up with regard to his rise in Daily Wire and all this. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember pretty much any of this because this was not important to me at any point in my life. So this is like the only thing I remember is that Cassie Dillon, now Cassie Akiva, was friends with Fuentes, I believe, and she texted me a debate that Fuentes had done. I think he was at BU at the time on immigration. And he did a tremendous job because Nick is a smart guy. Like he's again, I think what he believes is quite terrible, but he has some IQ. And so I had Daily Wire cover that debate because it was an immigration debate. And then I don't know if I was following him on Twitter or what the story was. Some tweet of his came up where he was basically accusing anybody who is pro-Israel of dual loyalty. And I said, that's an anti-Semitic trope, that everybody who supports Israel is loyal to the state of Israel over the United States, or is more loyal or as loyal to Israel as to the United States. And he uses that, I guess now, as sort of like, and that's when I decided that I had to go, don the dark cape. And it's like, well, first of all, that's oddly illogical. If the idea, I struggle to find a position that I think is evil, where if somebody called me that thing, I'd become more of it. So I've been labeled alt-right 1,000 times wrongly because the alt-right despises me and hates me and a significant portion of my death threats come from the alt-right. At no point have I said, okay, well, the left called me alt-right, so I'm going to do it. Right? The left, like, if my critique of Nick was back whenever it was, when I tweeted that he was engaging in anti-Semitism, and his response was, Hitler was an OG. Number one, was I wrong? And number two, why would that drive you to that? I'm confused. Right? There's literally no political position that I find despicable that you could force me to take simply out of oppositionality. Like, that's a weird thing. That's a very weird thing. So again, I think that, from my perspective, that's literally all I recall of any of this. You'll have to ask Cassie about it, because Cassie probably recalls more. But the idea that he was ever like an intern with us, or he was slated for a job with us, or that he was none of that's true.
How much of what you're seeing his recreation as he's going through the space, right? Hero, and then first guy that kind of went up against Israel, and a lot of people followed his lead. And then now he's like, well, I'm going to vote Democrat. No, we got to vote Republican. What do you think he's solving for? I had him on here. I actually enjoy talking to the guy. He's a smart guy, like you said. This is not somebody that's not smart.
Yeah.
And he's funny. He's entertaining. He's got talent.
Of course, he's a very funny broadcaster, for sure. Again, lots of people I disagree with and think are terrible are funny at their jobs. So what is he gaming for? He's gaming for personal loyalty. One of the great tragedies of my political life is the recognition that people don't follow ideas, they follow people. It makes me very sad, because I'm not a kind of person who wants that, right? I mean, this guy, and goes back to blind spots. I've always thought that I'm grateful for my position because I get to espouse ideas that I care about. Mm-hmm. But the idea that people are like Ben Shapiro stands, or they love Ben Shapiro, this has never been a motivating factor for me, nor do I think that, like, if I say something wrong, I'm fine with people calling me out on it. And also, like, when people come up to me and they say, I love you, but I disagree with a lot of what you say, like, cool. Like, that's like, I'm glad that I'm glad. Mm-hmm. I prefer you agree with everything I say and not love me as much. Meaning, like, I actually care about the positions. Yeah. I think for Nick, when you're trying to build a movement, which is clearly what he's tried to do, the unpredictability and the loyalty tests of it, like, I'm going left, no, I'm going right, no, I'm going this way, no, I'm going that way, follow me around. Like, that is all part of the game. I think that's true for Tucker, too. I think it's true for a lot of these people. Like, the more you can get people to buy into mutually contradictory assertions in loyalty to you, the more loyal they are. I'm very internally coherent in my politics, so I'm never going to ask you to buy into two propositions that contradict one another and prove your loyalty to me by doing so. Are
you surprised that him and Tucker are not more united?
Well, I mean, I think that that's a business thing. Meaning, I think that Tucker largely probably agrees with Fuentes, and I think Fuentes would probably think that too. I think that Fuentes was sort of taken aback by the fact that he went there and Tucker treated him really well and basically hugged him on his show. And then next thing you know, Tucker was sort of disassociating from him because he realized that it was bad business to be associated with Fuentes. So that whole kind of two-step is
you think deep down inside Tucker admires Nick for him to be a little bit more free to say whatever he wants to say and doesn't give a shit about making money? He's just kind of like saying whatever's on his mind?
Well, I mean, I think that to a certain extent, Tucker thinks that Fuentes is going to drink his milkshake.
So you think Fuentes is eventually going to come and side with him? Tucker thinks Nick is going to join Tucker?
No, the opposite. I think that Tucker is deeply afraid that Nick is going to drink his milkshake, that he's going to take his audience.
I got it. Okay.
That he sees him in a competitive space, and that's why he's constantly doing the, like, I'm patting you on the head. No, I don't want to see you again. I'm going to pat you on the head. No, you're a gay little FBI fat. Like,
can't do that to Nick.
Right.
Nick is not that guy.
I tend to agree, by the way.
No, Nick is not that guy. Do you think Tucker's always been like this, or he became like this?
I hesitate to speculate about what people, quote unquote, secretly believed. I can only speak to his public statements. So I know that he was not oriented toward capitalism since at least the mid-2010s. Mm-hmm. As far as his orientation on foreign policy, that seems to have kind of shifted and moved over time in a wide variety of ways. All I know is that right now I think that he is spewing an enormous number of untruths about the state of the world and conspiracy theories about systems that are rigged against you by nefarious powers, most of whom seem in his mind to have conflated with Israel, which, again, I think that is part of the underlying sort of tenor of a certain level of politics on the right.
So let's go to the Israel topic. So when the Israel event happened, October 7th, you came out, you had your statements that you made. They took the money and tried to win over politicians. AIPAC comes up, all these things that come up, right?
Right.
And then you'll say, well, it's really Bibi. Bibi's the guy we got to get rid of because Bibi is a fanatical. He's a, you heard what Mamdani said about Bibi. If he comes to New York, this is what I'm going to do. Then he realized he can't do any of it. So talk to the reasonable community in the middle. And if you don't mind doing the following, I can't hear these guys. I can't hear anything they're saying. But to the reasonable community in the middle, they're like, look, yeah, I get along with Jews. I do business with them. It's easy. They're very good business people. But, I also realize they got certain motives that they're trying to protect. What did Israel do wrong, or Bibi do wrong, or the Jewish community do wrong on the right? I'm not talking ADL. ADL is a very different game we're talking. I'm talking specifically conservative Jews or Israel or Bibi. What did they do wrong to all of a sudden get blasted on social media by the youth the way that they did the last couple of years?
Again, I will say that I think that to discuss Israel outside of the context of the broader political kind of environment in which conspiracy theories are rife would be a mistake. And so to say that Israel is driving, for example, Tucker Carlson to become radically anti-Israel, that Israel did something different October 8th than Israel had done October 6th. And that's what drove Tucker Carlson to where he is, or Candace Owens to where she is, or something. I just don't think that's true. As far as things that Israel has done wrong, I mean, are we talking internally or externally? Because I could name a dozen problems inside of Israel.
Give me any direction you want to go.
Okay, fine. I mean, internally in Israel, they have obviously major problems, including the fact that they have an entire sector of the population that is ultra-religious that refuses to serve in the army, and that's terrible. That's an internal Israeli problem. As far as
they refuse to serve in the army?
Yes. I mean, this is like a serious, it's probably the number one issue in Israel, and it explains a lot of sort of the chaos that you see inside the Israeli government, and also the reason why Bibi leads a coalition that is very unpopular in Israel, but also can't kind of be electorally defeated. The thing that people should understand about the Bibi of it is that if Bibi did not exist, the Israeli government would be following essentially the same playbook. In fact, the people who are running against him right now in an election that's slated to happen in October are running to his right.
They're running to his right.
Yes, that's correct. Gadi Eisenkot, Naftali Bennett. There's a perception in American politics that Bibi is a sort of radical right-wing figure. In Israeli politics, Bibi is actually slightly right of center and quite incrementalist in his approach. So one of the big critiques of Bibi has been that he actually has not gone hard enough, for example, in Lebanon, or he didn't go hard enough, believe it or not, in Gaza, because the idea was you should move faster and get fewer Israeli soldiers killed and all
this is the people further right than Bibi that are not happy with his actions that he took.
Even the people who are campaigning theoretically to his left, people like Naftali Bennett or Gadi Eisenkot on foreign policy, are actually where he is or to the right. Because the entire Israeli population has reacted to October 7th by saying we're not going to take a sort of defensive step backward. We're going to lean forward and say, okay, now we're going to preemptively hit threats. We are not going to wait for those to materialize.
So stay on that. So what percentage of the population, of the people that are running, are aligned on that topic?
On that topic,
that we should have reacted even stronger
in different ways to Iran, to Lebanon. I would say that there is a coalition that represents probably 80% of the population that is somewhere between just barely to Bibi's left, all the way to his right.
Wow.
So like there's widespread agreement on foreign policy in Israel. There are a couple of fringes that don't agree. I would say the Arab population of Israel obviously is one, which is about 20% of the population there. And there's a left-wing party run by a guy named Yair Golan. Okay, so those are internal problems in Israel. Then there's sort of how Israel has addressed the world. And I would say that Israel is operating in a mode that when it comes to PR, that I think is past its sell-by date. And that is that they have continued to try to make a moralistic argument with regard to foreign policy that I don't think has a lot of truck in a world in which people are significantly more realpolitik in their sort of approach. So I've said this openly. I think that the reasons that the United States ought to be allied with Israel, obviously I think that there's moral alignment with a democratic state that is allied with the United States and literally flying planes alongside the United States against common enemies like Iran. But put aside that, the real reason that we ought to be allied with Israel from a sort of realpolitik standpoint is that Israel is an extraordinarily technologically advanced military power in the region that has oversight and overwatch in a bunch of other areas where terrorist groups percolate, that Israel's intelligence gathering capacity is extraordinarily high, that Israel acts as what some generals have called a non-floating aircraft carrier for the United States. And again, if you're going to talk about aid to Israel, I've been talking about phasing out aid to Israel for probably 20 years. So that really is not the issue. So because I think that it is good for our allies to be militarily capable on their own. Israel has enough of an economy to support itself. I think in emergency situations, obviously like post-October 7th, when you have to ramp up your defense because you're on a war in 7 fronts, the United States very often will fund our friends and allies. We did that in Ukraine. I was an advocate, by the way, of funding Ukraine. That's another unpopular position on some parts of the right.
You were for funding Ukraine?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%, because I think the Russians are our enemies, and I think the Russians do not have America's interests at heart.
We just watched a complete masterclass in establishment gaslighting, and if there's one clear takeaway from this entire interview, it's that Ben Shapiro's priorities are completely disconnected from the American people. Let's start where his true loyalty always seems to lie: foreign wars and his absolute Israel-first obsession. Ben can talk around in circles all day long about free market economics and personal responsibility, but the moment foreign policy enters the conversation, the neoconservative mask slips off completely. He demands an endless blank check pipeline of American tax dollars sent overseas to fund Israel and fuel endless foreign intervention. Think about the sheer hypocrisy of it. He looks working class Americans in the eye, people struggling with inflation, housing costs, and decaying communities, and tells them that if they can't afford to live in their own hometowns, they should just pack up and leave. To Ben, working Americans don't deserve relief or economic support, but the military industrial complex and foreign governments deserve billions of your hard earned money without question. He brags that his foreign policy views haven't changed since he was 17 years old. That isn't something to boast about. That means he hasn't learned a single thing from 20 years of disastrous, multi-trillion-dollar foreign entanglements that destroyed American lives while leaving our own borders wide open. And speaking of blind trust in foreign and government authorities, look at how he doubles down on his disgraceful COVID vaccine record. In this interview, Ben aggressively attempts to rewrite history regarding his push for Big Pharma. He openly admits he blindly swallowed the government's narrative, trusting Pfizer, federal health bureaucrats, and establishment data without a single drop of skepticism. He mocked millions of everyday conservatives, called people idiots for raising legitimate, rational questions, and actively helped state level and corporate mandates pressure people into taking a medical treatment they didn't want. Now, when confronted, he hides behind the pathetic excuse that the data changed. That isn't principled commentary, that is serving as a mouthpiece for Big Pharma and the state when the public needed independent voices the most. When you look at the internal war happening on the right, his lack of self-awareness becomes laughable. Ben spends half his media appearances constantly bringing up Tucker Carlson. He can't keep Tucker's name out of his mouth because Tucker actually speaks to the frustration of everyday Americans, while Ben defends the dying uniparty establishment. Whenever Tucker or anyone else steps out of line, Ben acts as the ultimate gatekeeper, policing what conservatives are allowed to think. At the exact same time, he completely panics when it comes to Nick Fuentes and the growing youth movement. He refuses to engage in serious debate, hiding behind condescending rhetoric because he knows the younger generation sees right through his polished establishment talking points. The youth on the right are tired of endless foreign wars, tired of neoconservative talking points, and tired of being lectured by multimillionaires. Ben knows he's losing them and he has no answer for it. You don't have to take my word for it. Just go look at the public reaction in the comment section of that podcast. The organic audience is utterly exhausted by him. Comment after comment calls him out for being a foreign agent, an establishment shill, and a corporate propagandist who cares more about overseas borders than our own country. And what makes it even more desperate is the obvious army of generic bot accounts flooding the comment section to manufacture fake praise for him. When you have to rely on artificial bot swarms to artificially inflate your support because real human beings are walking away, your media empire is in serious trouble. Ben Shapiro preaches personal responsibility to everyone else, but when his own viewership plummets and his audience turns on him, he blames Tucker, he blames Candace Owens, and he blames conspiracy theories. He refuses to take a single ounce of personal accountability for the fact that he alienated his own base. Ben Shapiro isn't fighting the system. He is the system. He is the controlled establishment gatekeeper, and no amount of fast-talking, condescending lectures, or bought and paid for comment sections can hide that reality from the people who are finally waking up.